So, we have a card update that came up. And the gist of it is they're getting rid of these cards and they're adding a bunch of other stuff. So let's start with the cards they're getting rid of first. Getting rid of Vanish and Mind Blast. I feel like, as far as like the idea behind it, I understand why you'd want to get rid of Mind Blast just out of the necessity for like making Priest not be crazy combo. But also, I feel like it kind of limits the amount of things that a class can do when you start getting rid of the niche kind of tech cards that they have. Like getting rid of Mind Blast and Priest essentially removes its ability to do burst damage by like 50% because you still have the Holy Smites for comboing, but the Mind Blast is where the bulk of the damage is. So maybe more along the lines of like 70% of the damage and Priest is gone. So basically rip combo Priest, but along that lines, I feel like it's not that big of a deal because there will still be other decks that can do it. It's just if you're like a Priest aficionado and you want to only play Priest and you want to play a Burn Priest deck, it's impossible because they will never release cards like that, like this in the future. Same kind of thing with like Vanish and kind of like mid-range to control Rogue. It's not always specifically that, but just in general, having that tool of removing a board kind of was enough to keep those decks at least somewhat in the mind of people. When you think of like the most noteworthy one is the Quest Rogue, which ran this. But he had other decks like Pogo that would run this, which can't run that now. I don't even know how do you even make Pogo function as a deck when this is gone? I'm not entirely sure. It'd have to be some weird tempo thing, which is not really what that deck is supposed to be. So it's confusing to me. Well, confusing to me in a deck variety standpoint, but not confusing in like a identity standpoint, because they list all the identity options here and they're saying that the weakness of Rogue is supposed to be board clear, and now they have to get more cute about how they do that. It's just, I guess they just don't want it to be so straightforward as this is a board clear. Rogue gets this card because they have it for some reason. And like this is damage. Priest gets this card because they have it for some reason. And Priest still has the ability to do damage off of burst combos, but only with healing at the moment and Holy Smite. So regardless of that, as far as like the loss of this card, like what it affects, it's pretty straightforward that it would like means that Malagos Priest and Velen's Priest is no longer fitting, and that Pogo Rogue and any kind of mid-range to late game Rogue is no longer a thing. Not really too relevant right now, but much more relevant when the expansions roll around, whether or not you could run this or not. Anyway, now I have all these new cards as replacements. These two are supposed to be what replace Priest. Priest gets Radiance, which is essentially a cantrip. I look at this and I think Gadgets and Auctioneer, and that's about it. There's no reason to put this into your deck. There's almost always better healing in Priest, no matter what. It's a good basic card for the sake of like Priest is for healing, and that is what they do. But as far as like deck variety is concerned, it's very limited in its applications. The Plague Bringer I think is a bit more interesting because you have stuff like Pyromancer plus this, which can clear boards as kind of like a pseudo replacement. Like you think of like in terms of like replacement design, like this card has a means of replacing Vanish, which is cool, but Radiance has no means of replacing Mind Blast in any way. It's just 5 health to you, not 5 health to a hero. So I think if they did restore 5 health to a hero, it would be more interesting, because then you could use it in conjunction with like the shadow cards of where you flip the healing to damage. Then there at least kind of still be the combo Priest thing, just a little bit more limiting. But whatever. I like Plaguebringer a lot more as a concept. As far as balance goes, it's better too. As far as like whether you play it or not. Then you have all these other replacement cards. This is the replacement for Doomguard, I guess. We have a 7-mana 5/8 taunt demon with your other demons have +1 attack. I don't think it really becomes relevant unless you have like a mass demon resurrection spell that the demons have +1 attack. You think in the terms of like Gul'dan, where you would bring a bunch of demons on the board at once. If 2 of them are siege breakers, then it becomes kind of insane. But I think it was already pretty insane already. The only instance where I think it might be helpful is in cases where there's not very good taunt demons, which there really aren't once Void left the building. The 3/9 Void guy, Darkness Rises from Kobolds and Catacombs. That doesn't exist anymore. So this is kind of like the poor man's replacement of that, which is okay, but you know, it's nowhere near as good. Not that it needs to be. I think overall it's a pretty good card. It's just it's not like OP or anything. But I guess that's kind of the point. It's a basic card, you know. Well, a classic card. Classic card because it has a rarity. These are basic cards because they don't have rarities. These are and following going to be stuff you can get in the classic pack. So we'll see. I think it's not bad. It's just it needs a bit of help. We have Gift of the Wild, 8 mana, giving me +2/+2 and taunt. I think this card is really weak for the terms of a buff. You compare this card to, let's say, Soul of the Forest. Playing Soul of the Forest is essentially like giving your minions +2/+2 for 4 mana, but it's only after they die. But even in that instance, it's like you give 4 mana for +2/+2 to all your minions, and then for 4 mana more, you can give them taunt. It's like, what? No, the cost efficiency is just really bad. So I think overall, this is just a weak classic card that they're using to replace Naturalize for whatever reason. I feel like if you're going to replace Naturalize, you should probably make it like a really weak targeting spell. Not necessarily like Wrath, but like, what's a good replacement? Like, you have to think of like in the theming of Druid, of trying to deal damage to something but not being very good at it, but making it a targeting effect. Maybe making it like a choose one of like deal 2 damage or 2 damage to a minion, of course, or oh, well, they already kind of have that release. So it's like deal 2 damage, restore 5 health to your hero, but they released that last expansion. So I don't know. I just feel like that the space in which this card is bringing to the table is not particularly good, but we'll see if like you can like make a wide board consistently in some kind of controlled Druid. Maybe at some point that would see play in that kind of instance. Righteousness, give your minions Divine Shield. I obviously think of Maul whenever I think of this, and Maul was insane, but that's only because at 5 mana you would also get the 2 dudes along with it because you were playing on Paladin. So without the extra dudes in the weapon, this is obviously way worse, but it's still pretty good as far as like trading into a board. Really, this is only like actually good once you're in like a minion versus minion battle, but if you're ever facing something that like doesn't play cards like Control Warrior, this card's not very good because they mainly focused on efficiently removing your minions with spells and destruction effects rather than actually damaging your minions. I think this would be most effective in a meta where it's not easy to do 1 damage. So in the meta where Warrior and Mage are not relevant, this is actually pretty good. But other than that, I think this is pretty weak. Or if it's like mid-range meta, then this is like okay. We have our Legendaries. We basically have another instance of a 3 mana card that generates a thing. We already know these are always good, so this card is good. Just as any kind of value option for a deck that's looking for a dragon, we'll use this card. So if dragons are good in a deck, this will probably be included into it because it's just a good dragon. The effect itself of adding a legendary minion is also kind of fun if you can end up getting another Brightwing, because then it's Brightwing into Brightwing into Brightwing, but that rarely ever happens, so probably just going to be some highly real at some point. But there are always always a lot of value generation options from getting a legendary minion in your hand. And it can be from another class. So there's some weird cross-class shenanigans to be had with this kind of thing, which is kind of fun. High Inquisitor White Mane. It's basically like a worse Kel'Thuzon, but for 1 less mana, so that's the upside. You can only use it actively instead of passively. Kel'Thuzon was good in that he could always threaten the effect every turn, so you had to remove it. This isn't a case where you're effectively playing a heavy Death Rattle kind of deck or that sort of thing, and you have to trade in your minions and then you resummon them. That's where this card's at its best. So something like maybe like Mech Hunter at some point might think about playing this, but I don't know if we're in that kind of a meta right now to where we would want to do that, considering the removal is still pretty good. Even if you were to clone all of your mechs and their death rattles, you would still probably need more than that in some cases. But like, I don't know. Like if you think of the bombs and you play the bombs and kill them and then resummon the bombs, it's not too bad. So there's some flexibility to this card. It's not like the worst thing ever. We have Baron's Stable Hand, 7 mana 4/4, summon a random beast. This card is not good. People probably find a way to make it good in some kind of meme fashion, but as far as consistency goes, it's really, really not good. There are way better options. So I don't think this will see play unless like there's some really heavy battle cry abuse or something like that. SI7 Infiltrator is insane. Like this card is actually just really good. So that's just going to see play whenever secrets are like really annoying. You'll just put 2 in your deck because there's no cost. It's a 4 mana 5/4 with an upside. Why would you not play it? It's really, really good. And then Arcane Devourer is what if you made Questing Adventure 8 mana? Seems pretty bad. But maybe somebody want to run 3 Questing Adventures or something to that degree. We'll have to see. I'm not optimistic about that one. I think Questing Adventure is just strictly better overall with that kind of effect. You'd really have to sell me on like the Elemental tag or something. But overall, like they're not all trash. They're not all like ridiculously bad cards. There's at least 1, 2, 3. I'll give that like 4 like reasonable cards in there. 5 reasonable cards in there. They're not like amazing, but there's something, and they're in the classic set, so that's nice. I think if anybody's gonna get like crafted, SI7 Infiltrator would be one that you'd want, but only if like Secret Hunter or Secret Mage are a thing. Secret Paladin, I don't actually think this would be worth it, but we'd have to see.